Hello, my friends at Well Homed. I'm glad to see you guys again. So glad to hear everybody's well. Miss Phyllis, I hope you got over your fall and you're back at the home again. Okay, well, today I'm going to read you a story. It's called How Patty Earned Her Salt, and it's by W.L. Colby. And it says, things aren't always what they seem, and neither are people. And I'm sure you all know that. Okay, anybody sit back, relax, and listen to the story. She doesn't even earn her own salt. Patty had heard her mother say that morning in an impatient tone. If she were only a boy. Now, she might run errands or do something to get a little money, and we need every cent we can get, with the interest money to be paid, and land knows what else. Tut, tut, child, replied the good old Quaker grandmother. Thee must remember, Sophia, that the little one's a mere chick yet, and can only pick up the bits the mother hen scratches for. And Mrs. Drake, without saying more, had gone about her work, all unconscious that her words had been heard by the little girl beneath the window. Poor Patty! How those words kept repeating themselves in her ears. Was it true that she did not earn her salt? And she was so fond of salt. Her father often laughingly remarked that Patty would probably want to salt her coffee when she grew up to be a woman. How she wished she were a boy. Then, as her mother had said, she might earn some money by doing errands. Only the day before, the boy who came by to deliver the groceries had told Patty's mother that old Miss Hunter wanted a boy to run errands for her. But, he added, she's so awful stingy with her money that none of the boys will go near her. Perhaps, though, thought Patty, she would be willing to give salt for pay. And couldn't she run errands just as well as any boy? Her feet were good and strong, and didn't she walk 3/4 of a mile each day to school and back? Patty resolved, in spite of all the stories she had heard about the stingy old woman, that she'd go and ask Miss Hunter to let her do the errands for her, although her little heart beat like a trip hammer at the very thought of so bold an undertaking. Miss Hunter lived in an old-fashioned mansion only a short distance from the unpretentious farmhouse of the Drakes. Her brother had been a much-respected squire in the quiet town and was supposed to have been wealthy. But when he died, leaving his place to his only sister, Miss Hunter immediately dismissed 2 of the servants, retaining only one old man, who was lame and very deaf, to do the chores, while she occupied one room and seemed determined to have nothing to do with anyone. The only time she was to be seen on the street was on Sundays, when she drove to church in the strange old chaise behind the dismal-looking horse, which won for itself the title of Old Calamity. She never went to the store herself, and if a peddler were so bold as to call at her door, he was ordered away at once with the remark, "Don't come near me with your trash. I can't afford it." Patty had seen her in church, sitting always in the same position, never moving a muscle of her face until the sermon was over, when she would take her spectacles off, put them into their case, and walk out in a slow, dignified manner, speaking to no one and looking neither to the right nor the left. Such was the woman Patty had determined to serve. Was it any wonder her heart failed her? But as often as she felt like giving up her enterprise, her mother's words, "She doesn't even earn her salt," would ring in her ears, giving her fresh determination. Accordingly, the next day, on her way home from school, Patty walked bravely up the weed-grown path and knocked on the front door with the great brass knocker, which represented a lion holding a ring in his mouth. If the lion's head had been a live one, Patty would scarcely have stood more in fear of it. It seemed to her hours before she heard any sound, and not daring to knock again, she made up her mind to give up the attempt and go home, when she heard a scraping sound as of a huge bolt being slid, and the door was opened a little. "No, we don't want anything today," exclaimed a voice. "We got all the pins and needles we want, and—" "Well, if you please, ma'am, I don't want to sell anything," answered Patty, breaking in on the old lady's speech, fearful lest the door would be closed before she could make known her errand. "I'm Patty Drake, who lives in the house just a little way down the road, and I've come to ask you—" "You needn't come here begging," began the old lady in a sharp tone of voice. "We have enough to do to take care of ourselves without—" But if you please, ma'am, I don't want to beg for anything either," again broke in Patty. "Only I heard the other day that you wanted a boy to do errands for you, and so I thought that perhaps, I could do them for you." "But you are not a boy," answered the old lady, opening the door a little wider. "No, ma'am, but I can walk just as well as a boy, and teacher says I've got a good memory, and you'd only have to pay me in salt," replied Patty. "Pay you in salt, child? What do you mean?" exclaimed the old lady, opening the door still wider to get a view of her visitor. "Why, you see, ma'am, Mother said yesterday that I didn't even earn my salt, and I do like it so much, and I thought maybe you would let me do your errands for you and pay me in salt, and you could hang a towel from the window whenever you wanted me, just as Mother does when she wants the baker to stop, and I could do all the errands you would want done before and after school," answered the little girl almost in one breath, anxious to cover all possible objections at once. Well, I never," muttered Miss Hunter. "How old are you, pray tell?" "If you please, ma'am, I'm 9 years old, going on 10. "And do you think you could keep your own counsel, child?" "If you please, what is it to keep your own counsel?" asked Patty. "Why, it means that you mustn't tell people all that you see and hear in other folks' house." "Oh, I never do that," exclaimed Patty. "Mother doesn't allow me to tell what I hear folks say, 'cause she says it's telling tales out of school, and I'm sure if you would only let me do your errands for you, I would never tell anybody what I heard." "Humph," muttered Miss Hunter. "Your mother is more sensible than most people, and I guess," she continued, half musing, "that this little girl is just the one I want. She's big enough to do small errands, and Jake can do all the large ones, which aren't many." And turning to Patty, "So you'd be willing to take pay in salt, would you?" "Oh, yes, ma'am, indeed I would," she cried. "Will you let me?" Her eyes fairly danced at the prospect. "Well, if Mother is willing, and you'll be sure to do your work in good shape, you'll have to watch sharp for the cloth I hang out when I want you. Mind, it won't do for you to be off playing every time I want you. And you know, above all, you're to keep your own counsel. Can you do an errand for me this afternoon?" I suppose," faltered Patty. "I'll have to ask Mother first, but I know she'll let me, and I'll be right back." And suiting the action to her words, she sped away as fast as her feet could carry her. Her mother was not at home, but in answer to Patty's breathless request that she might go and do something for Miss Hunter, the dear old grandmother, half dozing in her chair, said yes. Patty scampered back, scarcely able to contain herself, and thinking all the time how pleased her mother would be when she would hear that her little girl was actually earning her own salt. Miss Hunter answered her knock, and handing her a covered basket, told her to take it to old Mrs. Brown, a poor, lame widow living at the end of a crossroad that ran between Patty's home and Miss Hunter's. "But mind," she added, "you're not to say anything about it to anybody." Patty assented, carrying the basket as she was bidden. It didn't take her long to do her errand. Then, as Miss Hunter said, there was nothing else to do that day. She hurried home, eager to tell her mother the good news. But she was doomed to disappointment. Her mother was indignant and declared that Patty should not be allowed to do any such thing. "The idea!" she exclaimed. "Pay you in salt? Indeed! No, she shan't, not if I know it." But here the grandmother interposed. "Why not let the child do as she wishes, Sophia? Did not thee say but yesterday that Patty was good for naught at home? And if she does as the old lady desires, she'll not be doing mischief. She surely can do no harm, and who knows," she added, "but the little one's innocent ways may have a good effect on the old woman." And at length Mrs. Drake yielded, as she always did sooner or later, to her mother's calm reasoning. So Patty entered regularly upon her duties as errand girl. To be sure, she did not have very much to do for the old lady, but then she was doing something and was no longer a useless being. As time wore on, there grew a strange attachment between the old lady and Patty, and after a while it became quite an ordinary affair for Patty to stop at Miss Hunter's on her way home from school, even when the cloth was not hanging from the window. She delighted to step in and wash the dishes on a Saturday and to help Miss Hunter dust the rooms on sweeping day. People wondered much at it, but Patty, true to her word, kept her own counsel and didn't tell what she often longed to have others know. Oh, she did want so much sometimes to tell people that what they took for miserly actions were only self-denying for the sake of others. For Patty could have told of many a basket of needed things that went into the little cottage at the end of the lane. Many a time she'd carried jellies and dainty dishes to the houses of sick, poor people, but always with instructions that the receiver must tell no one whence they came. Miss Hunter told Patty confidentially that if the townspeople knew about it, they would send every beggar who came along to her, and she despises beggars. Strange as it may seem, for once the village gossip was baffled. Those who received favors from the old lady respected her whims and kept their own counsel. True, some wag in the village jokingly remarked that the old miser, pointing to Miss Hunter's house, had grown so greedy that she sent a basket to collect the rent from some of her tenants. But no one knew the real facts of the case. Patty might have told, too, about the weekly letter she carried to the post office containing money to pay the board of an old, feeble-minded uncle in a distant private hospital, simply because this same uncle had taken care of Miss Hunter when she was a little girl. She had resolved that as long as she lived, he should not want for a single comfort. This had been her principal reason for the economy of the fortune left her by the squire, which was far from being as large as people supposed. Misjudged by others, the old lady kept on in her way, taking great comfort in her new-found Fred, for such Patty proved to be. Patty, on her part, began to love the one who denied herself luxuries for the sake of others. The summer wore away and winter came on cold and severe. Patty's father met with several losses in succession. First, the barn burned down. Then his two best cows died of a prevalent disease, and things began to look unusually discouraging. Worst of all, the interest on the mortgage would soon be due again. Mrs. Drake complained bitterly of their poor luck, and Patty, young as she was, shared the feeling of gloom and despair that hung over them, for no one knew what they would do or where they would go if they lost their home. One morning, as Patty was starting to school, her father called her to him. "Are you going to stop at Miss Hunter's?" he asked. "No, sir, but just as soon I shall have time enough." "Well, I wish you would take this letter to her," and he added, "you might stop on your way home for an answer." Patty took the letter and carried it as she was bidden, wondering much what it could be about, for her father didn't often write a letter. What could he be writing to Miss Hunter for? Was it something about her? All day long her mind kept reverting to the letter, and she could hardly wait for school to be dismissed. So anxious was she to see Miss Hunter, in hopes that she might find out something about it. When Miss Hunter opened the letter Patty left that morning and read it, she found just a few simple sentences stating that the writer, George Drake, having met with severe losses, would be unable to pay the interest on the mortgage that was held by her, and asking for time to obtain the necessary money. Although the day seemed very long to Patty, school at length came to a close, and she hastened as fast as possible to the old lady's house. Miss Hunter answered her knock and invited her to come in. As it was very cold, the woman insisted that Patty should sit down by the fire and warm herself. For a little while they sat in silence, and then the old lady said, "Patty, do you remember the day you came and asked me to let you do my errands?" "Yes'm." "Have you forgotten what you told me you wanted for pay?" "No." "Why haven't you asked me for your pay?" "Because I thought you'd give it to me when you wanted to." "Well, I've been thinking today," replied the old lady, "that it's about time you received some of your wages. You've been a good girl and have earned your salt well." So saying, she handed Patty a tin pail, which she said was full of salt. "Be careful not to spill any, and be sure you bring back the pail, as I cannot spare it long," she admonished. "Thank you ever so much," exclaimed Patty, thinking how pleased her mother would be when she should show her that she really had earned something. Oh, suddenly remembering her errand, I was to call for an answer to the letter that I left this morning. "Never mind the answer tonight," replied Miss Hunter. It seemed to Patty that the old lady had a beautiful expression on her face that she had never seen before as she bade her good night. She hurried home with her pail of salt, feeling very happy at the thought that it was all her own. But Mrs. Drake shared no such feeling. Her indignation began, as usual, to rise, and it was an effort for her to control herself and keep from saying harsh things, which would have spoiled Patty's pleasure. What was a little pail of salt compared with what Patty had done? The tears sprang to her eyes. "And she even wants you to bring back the pail, doesn't she? The stingy—" But a look from Patty made her pause. "Well, no matter. I'll empty it right away, and you can carry the pail back tomorrow morning. We're almost out of salt anyway. That's one comfort." So saying, she carried the salt into the pantry. In a moment, they heard her utter an exclamation of surprise. "Mother! Patty!" she called. "Come here, quick!" They hurried into the pantry to see what could be the matter, and Mr. Drake, who was just bringing in the milk, joined them. On the table was a pan into which Mrs. Drake had just poured the salt. But what was that glittering here and there in the pan? Gold. Yes, gold coins. Eagles, half-eagles, a number of smaller coins, all bright and shining, as if happy at the thought of the good they might do. And in an envelope was a gift of the mortgage on the house, presented to Patty Drake from her friend Adeline Hunter, with these words, "You have earned your salt." That was kind of a surprising ending, wasn't it?